You by GAIA, the streaming video service dedicated to exploring the cutting edge of metaphysics, ancient wisdom, and the unexplained. Get your first month for only 99 cents. Go to Gaia.com/campfire. That's Gaia.com/campfire. Thanks, Gaia.
Welcome to our gathering tonight. Here we share stories of ordinary people who have experienced extraordinary things. Sit back, relax, and warm yourself by Jim Harold's Campfire.
Welcome to the Campfire. I am Jim Harold, and so glad to be with you once again, and we have a great campfire in store for you. So what is the Campfire? Well, if you're new, this is where we simply have real folks come on the show and tell their true stories of the supernatural. That's it. Not a lot of fancy sound effects. We get right to the nitty-gritty, as it were, and people seem to love it. We've been doing it since 2009, and we welcome you aboard if you're new. And if you would also like a companion place to follow folks' spooky stories 24/7, check out our virtual Campfire Facebook group. And we've set a handy-dandy URL so you can find it real easy. Just go to virtualcampfiregroup.com. We will go ahead and accept you, assuming you're not a spammer. And there you can really meet up with some great people, like our first campfire caller tonight. Berto is on the line from Southern California. He's been listening since 2009. That's pretty much since the beginning of Campfire. So we're so thankful with all the new shows out there. We're like, boy, I hope folks stick with us, and Berto has certainly done that. We're very appreciative. He has a couple of stories he's going to share with us. And first is about visiting what is supposedly one of the most haunted houses in America, Whaley House in San Diego, and the strangeness that ensued. Berto, welcome to the program. Thank you for listening all these years, and tell us what happened at the Whaley House.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so great to be on here, a longtime fan. So the Whaley House, I live in Southern California, about an hour and a half from San Diego. And around 2009, I had a 6-month-old. And I was the dad you'd see, hanging out with that baby Bjorn thing, kind of hanging in the front, that kangaroo pouch. And I'd always keep my son there, that front backpack thing. And we decided to visit Old Town San Diego, a lot of great spots, and we ran across the Whaley House. And I remembered watching an episode on the Travel Channel about the Whaley House, and I was like, let's check this out. It's supposed to be haunted. And we paid the $10-12 for the tour. And what makes the story crazy is being somebody who, I've been into urban legends, ghost stories since I was, since as young as I could read. I was always looking for that kind of creepy stuff. So I was just thrilled to finally be at a historic / kind of haunted house. Me, my baby's mom, and myself, and we had a daughter too who was about 2 at the time. We all walk in, we take the tour, and there's the guides are wearing these like really cool like Victorian dresses, kind of looking like they're part of the time period. And we see that there's a courtroom. There is this place used to be a concession store, and it was like a 4-bedroom house. And still intact, still very well preserved. And so we're walking around, and I'm just kind of like scoping everything out. I'm a big history guy too, so I'm just kind of fascinated by everything. And when you first walk in, you walk towards the very back of the house, and there's a kitchen, and you have to walk through kind of like an entrance, but there's no door. It's the same width and height as a door, but for some reason it's missing the door.
Right.
And you just kind of walk through, and it's right next to this wooden staircase. And for preservation purposes, there's like this huge like glass window protecting, the actual kitchen. And before that, as you're walking in to the right, there's this little table. And for some reason, it wasn't very well lit. I think they were relying on kind of the sunlight to come in through the kitchen windows. There were some kitchen windows. And so the light would just kind of pierce through and kind of fill in the room with this light and through this window. And I'm hanging out. I got my son in my baby Bjorn thing. and his legs are just kind of kicking, and we're looking around, and like, just kind of looking around, and all of a sudden there's this huge like woof of vanilla, as if there was somebody walking by with a candle, like one of those Yankee candles, and it was just like this really strong vanilla scent. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, what's going on here? I'm like, where's this coming from? Like, do they have one of those Glade plug-in things, or is there like a candle lit? I'm like, what's going on? And so, obviously there's hardly any real electrical outlets. I mean, there is electrical, but there's nothing I could see anywhere around there. And I just thought nothing. I'm like, that's cool. Well, hey, it smells nice. So I keep walking around for another 15 minutes. We go upstairs. There's like a theater upstairs, and so it's a really cool house. And as we're leaving, I was like, you know what? Let me ask the tour guides. Maybe they've experienced some stuff. Let me just get a little more insight about what really goes on here. And the tour. I talked to the tour guide, and she's like, oh yes, people have told us that they've seen Mr. Whaley at the top of the stairs. That they've walked into his daughter's bedroom and they've seen somebody looking in the mirror. And just like she kind of goes on for a few seconds, she's like, oh yeah, and some people tell us that they've smelled Mrs. Whaley, and she was known to love wearing a vanilla scent, and some people have sworn that they've smelled her walking by. And as she says that, what's crazy, and I tell my son this, he's 9 now, and my son starts just like going crazy, like his legs start kicking, he starts like crying, and so mom and and me, we look at each other and we're like, what the heck? And we're like, maybe he needs a diaper change, maybe he, I don't know, something's going on, maybe he's hungry. Okay, so we're like, we kind of ended short off, well, thank you very much. We step outside, kind of look in his diaper real quick, everything's good, and literally as soon as we walk outside, which is crazy, like he stops crying. His diaper's not wet. He's like refusing the bottle, refusing like his little snacks. And yeah, kind of weird. So as soon as she says that, he starts crying. And then, so we walk out, and then there's like no tears, like no, necessities for my, my young 6-month-old, which was weird. And one thing I tell my son now, cause he's kind of getting into, the more scaries, to tell in the dark, I think his name's Alvin Schwartz story stuff. And I always tell him, oh, I bet you, the ghosts were looking at you and like making funny faces, which is why you started crying, because they say kids can see ghosts, or, people like to say that. But I tease them about that. And because they always, they know all about this story. And every now and then when I'm around their friends, like, hey, Dad, tell them that story from the Whaley house. And so it's kind of like a family story now. Yeah, so that's my crazy Whaley house story.
I know you also had another story about another tourist attraction, the Queen Mary, right?
Yes. So the Queen Mary. So back around this, I think it was 2010. My sister and her boyfriend and I, we all went to the Queen Mary, and this one's a trip. This one's crazy, and I've been hesitant to send a picture I took to the Queen Mary. I've been hesitant to put it on your campfire Facebook, your virtual campfire.
Right.
But this is like some legit stuff, or at least I'd like to think so. So we take the ghost tour at the Queen Mary in 2010. We go through the whole spiel, and it was a great experience. And at the time I was a little bit younger, and my sister was a little bit younger, so we kind of decided to go off on our own from the tour, and we realized that basically, and I don't know if I'll get in trouble for this, but basically you can leave the tour and you have all access to the Queen Mary. Like there's not really, yeah, so you basically can leave and kind of walk around the hotel, which is what we did. So we end up like going in the elevator and like going all the way down, just kind of walking down the hallways and just kind of exploring, because the Queen Mary is basically a hotel. And so we end up walking into this, we're at the very bottom deck, and we end up walking into this storage closet, but it was more like a storage room. We didn't know what it was. We just saw there was doors open, and it was really pretty dark in there. So we walk in there, and there's like chairs and tables. I think that's where they put all their banquet event, furniture at the very bottom of the lowest deck. And we're just kind of exploring and just trying to scare each other. And we're walking around for about 3 minutes in this like little storage room. And all of a sudden my sister's like, hey, look, I need to go to the restroom. And it happened to be that, nearest to this, right by the storage room, there was a restroom. And so, she goes in there, and while I'm waiting for her, me and her boyfriend, we're just kind of hanging out and just taking pictures and just kind of relaying some of the stuff we had, you just heard about during the tour. And so I take out my phone and I start taking pictures, and this is like the iPhone, I think like 2. So I'm just snapping around, taking all these pictures, and really think nothing of it. And when I get home, I upload my pictures and I just start going through them. And, obviously there's really, it's like you really never catch anything. And I had never really intended to. I was just taking pictures. But I did see one picture that had what looked like 4 little orbs at the very bottom of the screen. And there were pictures from that storage closet experience. And so at about maybe a 30-meter distance from a storage closet, to my left, there's the women's restroom, and I'm taking pictures back toward the storage closet. And so I zoom into like these 4 little orb things on the kind of like near the ground.
Okay.
And as I'm zooming in, I realize that directly behind the orbs is what looks like an older man wearing, probably 1915, 1920s clothing. And what you can see is you can literally see, and it's funny because I actually have the picture up on my computer right now. You can see his legs, and you can see right between his legs what looks to be the background of the storage closet. The man looks to be wearing a vest, and you can clearly kind of see like a vest and like the white shirt outside of the vest. And there's even like almost like a tan skin tone. And this is emerging from a room that is dark, that, I had nothing but just kind of, sunlight coming in through these like circular windows along the side of the deck. And he looks like his arms are crossed and he's looking back at me. And what's crazy though is you can actually, once you zoom in, you can actually see what look like legs. You can see what looks like a vest. You can see light piercing through him, and you can still see the background of the, which is the storage closet, like all this kind of random junk behind him. And, this picture I've held onto for quite a while. And it wasn't until I decided to call in, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to, if I can, post it on your virtual campfire and just let people kind of decide. But it's all but an iPhone 2, and it's still the original picture I have, and a digital copy. But yeah, it's really interesting because I've showed a lot of people. I teach a middle school, and I remember I had one of those days where my kids were just kind of out of it,
right.
kind of a way to bring them back. Where,
right.
Hey guys, you guys want to see a picture? I think I took of a ghost. And so they all kind of went crazy. And I've had about 60 of my 6th and 7th graders confirm it too. But I mean, all in good fun. But I really do, and I don't tell them this, but I really do think it's a real ghost.
That is so cool. Well, I'll tell you what, Berto, if you put it up there, we're going to send you an email when the show is released. And when you get that email, if you could post it over our virtual campfire group, I'd appreciate that way people can listen to the show, and then they can find the photo and, chime in and let you know what they think. Does that sound good?
Awesome. And I did tell one of my classes, I told them the other day, I was like, hey, you know what? I might be on this podcast, guys, or people calling and tell ghost stories. So I told them I would give them a shout out. So to my period 5, hello there.
Excellent. Well, we'll be sure to get this up right away so they can get their shout out. And folks, if you don't know what we're talking about, the virtual campfire group, it's on Facebook. It's free. I think we're up to over 16,000 members now. And it's basically where people like Berto come on and they share their paranormal stories just like they do on the show. But this is 24/7, 365 days a year. And I think daily we have new stories and new images of people's personal experiences. And it's a very supportive community. And we try to keep a close eye on it, to keep it that way. So if you want to check it out, it's absolutely free. You just type in virtualcampfiregroup.com. It'll take you right to that Facebook group. You can request membership, and we'll get you approved right away and get you in there so you can meet great people like Berto. Berto, thank you so much. Thanks for your long time support. I look forward to seeing that photo like everybody else, and thanks for being a part of the campfire.
Hey, thank you so much, Jim.
iPhone and iPad users, help us keep the campfire at the top of the charts. Go into your Apple Podcasts app right now and hit subscribe. We appreciate it. Now back to Jim Harold's Campfire.
Anissa is calling from the great state of Texas, and she's had a series of experiences starting way back when she was 4 years old. She's going to tell us about them. Anissa, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us, and tell us what happened.
Yeah, so I had my first experience when I was 4, and I guess I'll read the story by I lost two grandfathers and one older woman in my family who was pretty much a grandmother figure.
Oh.
So I was very aware of death and what it meant at a very young age, and I was raised religious, so I understood, parts of what afterlife meant and whatnot. And so when I was 4, I was sitting up late, and the grandfather that I lost that I was closest to, we always used to watch Westerns together, and I was up way too late watching Westerns, sitting in his chair, wrapped up in his blanket, and during all these experiences, my mom was asleep on the couch, probably 10 feet from me, and she never woke up or nothing. So that was one thing that struck a chord with me throughout this whole night that made it not make that much sense. So I was sitting there watching TV, and I heard in the kitchen the water faucet come on. And I was like, okay, that's weird. No one's up. No one's in the kitchen. Why is the water on? So I just sat there and was like, maybe I'm just hearing something from outside. And it kept going, then it shut off. So I just went back to watching TV, and then a few minutes later, the water came back on again. Like, all right, what's going on? So I got up and went to the kitchen, and the house was a very long, kind of shaped like a barn, much more long than it was wide.
Mm-hmm.
So to hear something come from the very back of the house to the very front of the house, had to be really loud. So I went, checked, nothing was on. Like, all right, this is weird, whatever. Went back to watching the Westerns, and a few minutes later, I hear all the pots fall out of the kitchen, or kitchen cabinets. And so then I look at my mom. She didn't wake up. How did that not wake up my mom? That was so loud. And so I look around the house, like, all right, no one else is getting up. Creep into the kitchen. Nothing's wrong. Everything's in the cabinets. Everything's fine. All right, that's really weird. I run back to the chair and curl up in the blanket because I'm like, this is definitely not right.
Right.
And at that minute, I look up, and the way the house was set up, my room was, I guess, supposed to be like the second bedroom or second living room upstairs, or a game room. I didn't have a door, just a doorway, so you could see straight into my room. And when I looked, this shadow person went across my doorway, and the way there was no windows over there, no way that a shadow from a car or anything could have gone. It was pitch black in my room, and this thing that walked across my doorway, or didn't walk, it floated across my doorway, was blacker than the shadows, that blacker than black thing. It was really, I didn't move from the chair the rest of the night. I fell asleep in the chair and just curled up in a blanket, like, nope. And then second experience was probably a few years later. I was a little bit older. I was taking a shower, and the shower curtain was open just a bit, and on the far end of the shower. And I went to grab something, I guess shampoo or whatever, and there was a girl standing there, and she looked a lot like me, and she just was standing there, just staring at the wall. She was solid, not see-through, and I just froze. Like, who's in the bathroom? And a few seconds later, she just disappeared.
Huh. That's really frightening.
Yeah. Yeah, I now have to have dark shower curtains, and
I don't
make
blame
sure
you.
that it's closed at all times. And,
I do not blame you. And there was more.
Yes. The last occurrence in the house that I remember, I was probably 9 or 10 or so. Our family dog that we'd had for the longest time, which was my grandfather's dog as well, he had finally passed. And I remember it was the day I was just kind of sad about him being gone and thinking about my grandpa. And I was on my bed, and I remember my eyes closed, and I felt someone sit on my bed. And I thought it was one of my parents just coming to like comfort me. They could see I was sad. And then I felt a dog curl up on the other side of my legs. When the person sat down, I felt them put their hand on my leg, like reassuringly. And then I felt the dog curl up, and my dog was an outside dog, so this feeling wasn't something I was used to. It's not like he slept in my bed with me or anything. And at that minute, I opened my eyes because I was like, "Whoa, what's happening?" And there was no one there, but I could still feel like the impressions of someone there. But that was very comforting, just felt reassuring that they were there. Like, hey, it's okay, we're here.
And that was that was the last event at that house.
At that house, yes.
But there was more.
And then there was there was a head scratcher moment. There in my room, we rented the house, so we couldn't really fix the wall, change the paint, or anything. In my room, there was these large, creepy murals of the Care Bears. I don't know why they always creeped me out, but they were just, maybe since they were so big and I was so small, they were just really creepy. And I was in my room one day, and I swear I wasn't asleep. I still swear I was fully awake. Maybe I was having a fevered awake dream or something. I don't know. But they started moving on the wall.
Oh, man. But my wife had a similar story where she thought when she was a child she saw some cartoon characters move on the wall. But did you say they talked? Did they talk?
They did.
Oh,
yeah,
my.
they because it was like a whole scene from the Care Bear. So like there were like 2 or 3 of them, and whatever other like weird characters were in the show. And I just remember they started moving because they already unsettled me, and when that started happening, I was just like, no.
Can't say I blame you.
Yeah, and so that was the one weird head scratcher. I swear I was awake, not sleeping dream moment I had in that house. And then after we moved away, years and years later, I lost my father to his battle with depression, and I had a dream shortly after I lost him that we were back in that house. And I'm not a person who remembers a lot of detail, but this dream was like everything in my room was just so specific to the trinkets I had on my shelves. Everything was just like you dropped me right back in a place and time. And me and my dad were in my room talking, sitting on my bed talking, and my mom was in their room packing his bags. I never really saw her, but I could just somehow tell she was in there, but it was like very mechanically. She was just like packing his things away. I don't know what kind of dream language that was. But yeah, we were sitting on my bed talking, and I'm a photographer, and we went to take a picture, but it was a selfie. Instead of using my camera phone, I used my DSLR, which was another weird thing in the dream. And I took a picture of us, and I turned the camera around to look at the picture, and my dad wasn't in it. And I automatically just started bawling. And he looks at me and says, "Baby girl, you know I'm not really here, right?" And I just lost it even more because I was like, no, this can't be real. It can't be real. And I don't know, I woke up, I like shot out of the dream with just tears rolling down my cheeks. Like, I don't know, it was so weird, but real and reassuring that he came to tell me that even though, he passed in a very sad and just rough way, that he was okay and that he was in a better place and better mind state and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, so in terms of your experiences, do you view them, some of them were spooky, some of them, maybe reassuring in some sense that, the loved ones live on, your loved ones lived on. What do you think, what's your attitude about these experiences?
I'm totally fine with them. I've had many more, and I'm sure I'll submit some more stories. Mine is that first one with that weird shadow thing in my room. They were all really positive, and even the experiences I've had outside of that house, or outside of having to do with that house, have all been positive. So yeah, I've had a lot of haunted things happen. It's not something that I'm very afraid of. I think as long as, you keep a mindset that it's all right, they can't do anything to hurt you. So
that sounds like a really good attitude. Anissa, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Campfire and for sharing these stories. Jim Harold's Campfire is brought to you by GAIA, the streaming video service dedicated to exploring the cutting edge of metaphysics, ancient wisdom, and the unexplained. And keep listening, because I'm going to tell you how you can get your first month for only 99 cents. A tremendous deal, folks. So I do want to say a personal word about GAIA. They've been sponsoring the Paranormal Podcast for about 1.5 years now. And really, their sponsorship was key. We changed and reorganized the way that we did business. And honestly, during that time, the money wasn't flowing into the coffers as it once had. And it was necessary changes. It was good changes, but changes that needed to be made. And thanks to GAIA, we were able to do that and never miss a show. And honestly, without GAIA, I can't say if we would have been able to continue. So I want to thank them, and I want you to give them a chance, but not only because they've been really nice to Jim and supported these shows. No, I want you to check them out because they are a perfect service for people like us. We're different kind of people. Believe it or not, some people out there aren't interested in the mysteries of life, the metaphysical, afterlives, ghosts, the UFOs, ancient mysteries, and the metaphysical. But we definitely are. And that's why I think so many of you love the Campfire, and that's why I'm sure you're going to love GAIA just as much. Now, I enjoy comedies and dramas that you see on those huge streaming services as much as the next person. But they're missing something. They're missing great content in video on the topics we love. But thankfully, there is GAIA. Now, not only does it have the topics we love, you can watch GAIA on all of your devices. There's Apple TV, your iPhone, your iPad, your Chromecast, your Android device, Fire TV, your Roku, your computer. If you're listening to the Campfire, you can watch GAIA. Here's some of what you're missing if you're not a part of GAIA this week. For example, David Wilcock, Wisdom Teachings, new episode, Life Beyond Matter. David suggests that one day intelligent life in our geometric universe could evolve past physical biology to become beings of light. Or perhaps you want to check out this edition of Cosmic Disclosure this week from Corey Good, viewer questions number 13, A New Future for Humanity. The recent round of updates on the program has left viewers with many questions in need of answers. And to help us gain a better understanding of these disclosures, Corey responds to a series of questions posed by the audience of Cosmic Disclosure. I love that kind of interaction. That's fantastic. This one in particular, one of my favorite subjects, Regina Meredith on Open Minds. Her guest this week is Rajiv Party. And Rajiv talks about dying to wake up. Near-death experiences have the profound ability to change one's life forever. Rajiv Party brings the wisdom he gained from the other side to help others heal their hearts through the power of forgiveness and connecting with the stillness within. Fascinated by near-death experiences, so I can't wait to watch that one. And just that and so much more exclusive, fantastic content on GAIA that you're missing unless you're a member. So here's how you get it. Go to Gaia.com/campfire. That's GAIA.com/campfire. Now there, I've handpicked some shows that you can watch on things like UFOs, haunted places, and Bigfoot that I thought you might enjoy. And you can watch shows and you don't have to sign in or anything, which is great. Plus, on that page, you can even see my appearance on Beyond Belief with George Norrie from a couple of years back. And again, you don't have to log in, don't have to sign up to anything to do that. So go do that. And once you watch those, you're going to say, man, Jim was right. This stuff is great. And that's what I'm hearing from social media. People are loving GAIA. And once you've watched that, scroll down to the bottom of the page and you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents. I mean, that's basically nothing. And you get a great month of enjoyment of great material. And I know you're going to love it. So go to Gaia.com/campfire. That's GAIA.com/campfire to see what's happening on the largest consciousness media streaming platform in the world. I love it. You'll love it. Thanks, Gaia.
Now back to Jim Harold's Campfire.
Longtime listener on the line, Melissa from Ohio, a fellow Buckeye. We're so glad to always speak to our fellow Ohioans. And she has one of my favorite kind of stories. And yes, I'll use that word. I have to bleep myself, poignant, because we kind of laugh at the fact I use that word so much. But it's appropriate. These stories, I think, are poignant about the loss of a loved one and what happens afterward. Melissa, welcome to the program. Thank you for listening all these years, and please tell us your story.
Absolutely. Hi, Jim. So I've been a member of the Campfire Facebook group for a little while, too, and
Thank you.
I've seen some discussions recently, yeah, no problem, about experiences with loved ones that have crossed over. And, some people seem to be looking for more stories that give, like, hope and validation. And, I'm so sorry, Jim, for the loss of your father-in-law, Al. But, some of what you said, you're welcome. But some of what you've said is, honoring his life inspired me to find the courage to share my most amazing and favorite paranormal story. So I hope it brings some comfort to other listeners that are maybe missing their dads on the upcoming Father's Day holiday, too. And even though my story might be a little sad at some points, be patient because I promise that you won't regret it.
Okay.
So I've always had an interest in the paranormal, and, my father really encouraged that interest. So he was a mechanic and an electrician. He was really like the kind of guy who could figure out how to fix anything and how it all worked, which was really helpful for debunking things. He even built his own airplane. Our family owned an airport, and he grew up there, and he was always tinkering and exploring and, figuring things out. So growing up, we listened to Coast to Coast, and we watched the X-Files together and Unsolved Mysteries and all of that good stuff. And even when I was in college and the internet was mostly dial-up, he called me one day and told me that he had found this webcam in the Willard Library in Evansville, Indiana. And we used to watch those sometimes and capture images, and we would just talk about things that were paranormal often. We even chased a pair of UFOs once, but I think that we'll talk about that some other time. So fast forwarding to the spring of 2011, my family was over the moon for my husband and I to be expecting again. My dad was like the greatest grandfather to our almost 4-year-old son at that point. Nothing made him happier at that time than really watching his family live a mostly happy and ideal life. We really had hardly any time at all to process the loss of part of our pregnancy around 10 weeks when we received a whirlwind diagnosis of my father's, which was until that point an unknown cancer. Oh. It was so metastatic that the doctors couldn't figure out, where it had even begun. So one thing they all agreed on was that it was terminal. My brother was getting married in the fall, and I was due around Christmas, and he was really, not ready to leave, and he tried so hard to fight, but, it wouldn't prolong our devastation. So at that point, he entered into hospice care, which is both a blessing and a curse. It allows you the chance to prepare for the end, but a curse, of course, that you wish that none of it was even happening in the first place. But in the end, that suffering can somewhat be a relief when it's over. Because of our shared interest in the paranormal, I asked him, Dad, if you have any strange experiences or visitors or anything, will you please, share with me what you're feeling, what you're seeing?
Right.
And, we'd always had that common interest. And there were plenty in just 7 weeks. As the end drew nearer, the faces that he saw were clearer and more familiar, and the relationships were closer, the closer he came to, the end of his life. So we had a 3D ultrasound of our baby remaining at one of those private places where you could have a chance to meet the baby too ahead of time. So to know me, you'd have to know that I love all things that are shiny and fancy, and my personal motto is that red lipstick is a state of mind. So that said, our family already included one son, and of course I really wanted a daughter to share, mani-pedis with and to teach her how to smash the patriarchy. So we like to be well-rounded, The ultrasound showed that that our fraternal twin was another boy. Well, I was still happy, and there's nothing quite like the bond of brothers, and he's since grown up to be an incredible little dude. But a few days later, my dad and I were talking about how life would be, when he wasn't here anymore, and, when he was gone, and he laid his head on my belly and he felt some movement. And so it was then that I said, Dad, I've always hoped for a family with 3 children. And I really believe that this other baby was a girl. So when you're up there, will you please send me a daughter? And he laughed at me and he was like, well, gosh, I don't know what they'll let me do, but like, I'll try. So I was like, no, Dad, no. Like, if I'm stuck with 3 smelly boys, I will curse you. And he was like, well, I said, don't you think that I should have a daughter? I, of all people, should have a daughter. And he was like, yeah, but she's got to be just like you because I need to have something to do. I need to enjoy the show. So we laughed about it, and, time moved on. And as I said, he saw a lot of people that he missed, and he even got a little upset at one point that why hadn't he seen his parents yet? So he was sleeping more. And one day, he woke up and he looked over at me and I was sitting beside him. And luckily at that time I had a job that I could work from home. So I was with him a lot. And he said, do you see my dad standing over there? And he gestured towards a large bedroom window. And at that exact moment, a bright light flashed through the window.
Wow.
So it was in the afternoon, and it could have been a car passing by. Maybe it was coincidental, but even coincidental, I don't know. Those things give you comfort sometimes too. So I said, no, Dad, I don't see him, but can you please tell him that I love him and I miss him? And then I said out loud, Grandpa, I'm not comfortable, or I'm comfortable to feeling or seeing you. So, if you can give me some kind of sign. And then my dad said, he says Mom will be here soon, his mom. So that night I was sitting beside my dad in an armchair, and I let both my arms rest open palmed on the side of the chair beside my dad.
Right.
And I prayed and I talked to God, and I asked my grandfather, who I hoped was still in the room, to give me some kind of a sign that things were okay. And by this point, it was really difficult to watch my dad be in pain. And I felt at that moment someone hold my hands, like my hand was inside of 2 hands, like a double-handed handshake.
Right.
But it was both my hands. So it would have been, 2 people or 2 beings, with one with each of my hands on either side of the chair.
Wow.
And at that moment, yeah, it was amazing. But when you have like so much stress in your life or tension, and you just have this sigh of relief where you don't realize how much tension was building until you can like let it go.
Right.
It was one of those moments, like unlike any other sigh. So I felt pretty good at that point, peaceful. And the next day, my dad wasn't doing very well, and family was there, and we live in the same suburbs as my parents, and I'd been staying there a lot. So my husband asked me to come home since more people were there and to just get some good sleep in my own bed. I was only a few miles away if they needed me. So that night I went home and I tucked my son into bed. And as I lay there trying to fall asleep, I glanced out in the hallway of my bedroom and I could see my father standing there in my hallway.
Oh my.
Yeah. And I knew just then, things were happening. The phone rang, and it was my mother, and she was asking where some kind of an IV med, I don't remember what it was. It was kept in the refrigerator though. It was used to kind of help him when he became anxious or restless or in distress. And it wasn't really a last resort, but it was kind of one of those like big guns, so to speak. So I told her where it was and I said, I'm on my way over. She said, no, you don't need to come over. I think it's okay. But I kind of ignored her and I woke my husband and I said, I can't be here. He's passing now. I know it. I have to go. So he stayed with our son until someone could come and relieve him to come and be with me.
Mm-hmm.
And on my way to my parents' house, she called back and said, okay, I think you should probably come. And I was on my way already. So when I got there, without going into too much detail, I can definitely say I could sense that his spirit was gone. And I knew that because I had seen him. So growing up, I was in Catholic school, and I was lucky enough to have a pretty progressive teacher who was reading a book about near-death experiences at one point. So being a curious middle schooler, we asked her, what is it about? Tell us something. And she said, I'll tell you one thing. I learned in the book that God never allows a person to truly suffer. He'll take your spirit before your body even feels the pain of death. And that has always given me such comfort through, several losses over the years. And now I believe it to be 100% true. After watching my father cross over, saw him in the hallway before things got too difficult. And I knew that he knew that I wanted to be with him when he passed. And so I really feel like he used every bit of his energy to make sure that I could be there. So in the moments that he passed, the lights flickered, the coffee grinder in the kitchen turned on, the clock on the stove reset and beeped and flashed 12 o'clock, and the power was still on. Nothing had really done a lot. There was no reason for those things to be happening, except that was the moment that he had passed away. So something I've worked on through the years is to really try to be more intuitive and to focus on that ability. And this is one of the few incidents where I've kind of sensed like a spiritual chaos, but not in a malicious way, but like a confusing, crowded room kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if he was just figuring his energy out or if it came out in some random, eruption, but it was interesting at the time. It made perfect sense in that moment. So a few months later, before our son was born, our second son, I'm sitting in church and a couple pews ahead of my family that were some friends that we were close with. And it was during a song and everyone is standing and I wasn't really feeling up to standing. I was pretty pregnant at that point. And I look over at my friend whose father was with her and he was bouncing her little girl on his knee. So everyone is singing around us, but they were kind of in their own blissful bubble, like making eye contact, giggling. It was adorable. And I felt like everything else around us was like peripheral, except for us. Like I was being shown this moment, almost like a movie. And I intuitively knew that my father was doing the very same thing with my daughter in heaven, either as the baby that we lost. I know it's incredible, but it could have been the baby we lost or maybe the baby yet to be born or both, which is actually what I believe now, because in 2014, we welcomed our beautiful daughter.
Aww.
So the moment that we learned we were having a girl, to say that I was happy was like an understatement. More than just the idea of wanting a girl, I'm still, 4 years later, so full of joy that he kept his promise to me, that I was given the signs, and still today I receive those signs, that he's okay and he's still with us. And when she was born, there was a bright red heart-shaped birthmark on her forehead.
Oh.
So I immediately knew that it was his way of sending us a sign or a kiss from beyond. And, just like he said, he did make her sassy and smart, just like me. And I know exactly how her mind is working. And my God, my husband is exhausted having two of us. I think it's pretty funny though. I mean,
that's a great
I know
story.
what's going on in her mind. Yeah. So I just hope that on Father's Day, to anyone who's missing their dad or experiencing a loss, that maybe this story brings some comfort to you too.
That's a great message. And Melissa, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I believe that they do communicate. And it seemed like your father really had an awareness going into all of this. And just those stories of seeing different loved ones as he was going through this process, it just, to me, it's a slam dunk. There is another side. He is on that other side. And he's reached out and let you know that he's still around and probably pulled a few strings as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Melissa, thanks for being a part of the campfire tonight.
Thanks so much, Jim.
Gary is on the line from Seattle, and he's going to talk about something that's been happening with his late parents' home and maybe get your thoughts on it. Gary, welcome to the show, and tell us what's going on.
Well, see, both my parents are now gone, and my brother and I still own their home, and so it's pretty much still as it was when they were around, and we kind of take turns taking care of it. My nephew has been living there, taking care of the place. He's experienced some odd things as well there. But the story I was going to tell you about was just recently, this past summer, I was over there taking care of things and woke up in the middle of the night one night at probably around 3:45, and I was woken by this sound of a woman singing in the house, and not singing words really, more of a humming a tune type of a thing. It almost sounded like she was roaming the house, like checking things out, just casually singing to herself. So I got up and I went looking for what could be causing this, or if someone was in the house. And every time I catch up to it, to the sound, it would change direction, like it would be behind me.
Huh.
And so I'd turn back around and go look for it again. And then the same thing would happen. This happened probably 3 or 4 times until I got to the basement. And then that's where it stopped. But what's funny is the next morning, my nephew came by and I had asked him if he had experienced anything there recently. And he started to tell me about this singing woman in the middle of the night. And I immediately was covered in goosebumps. Like, oh my gosh, okay, that just happened to me last night. And then this past Christmas, I was in the kitchen, which is where my mom, spent most of her day. She was always hanging out in the kitchen. And my other nephew and I were in there talking about her and standing by the stove when the fan that's above the oven turned on by itself. And this is one of those from the 70s. It's like, it's got one of those metal buttons that you really have to push down hard on to turn the thing on.
Oh man.
So we just stood there looking at each other like, okay, I think that was her saying, I hear you talking about me. But there's been a lot of things in that house that have, every time I'm over there, something odd happens that I can't explain. And so I'm really curious about some of these things that have been going on, and I'd like to maybe even get it investigated or something before we end up selling the home. I'd like to, know more about all this, because my dad built the place in the 70s, so it doesn't have like a lot of history, but both of them have passed away in the house, and my grandma's passed away there too. And
do you think that maybe the singing woman is either your mom or your grandma? Do you think that's possible? Maybe when they were younger or something?
It could be. I would tend to maybe think that it'd be more my grandma, because it really didn't sound like my mother.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd like to know if these things are like, family friendly or
interesting. Well, I one place where you might get some opinions. I don't know if you'll get any answers, but you'll get some opinions is over at our virtual campfire group on Facebook. That's where people, and I encourage the listeners, if you have a story that you want to share and get some feedback from the audience, we have over 13,000 members over there now, and that's free. That's the virtual campfire Facebook group, and that might be one place you might be able to get some opinions. I'm not going to say you're going to get answers, because I think my feeling is answers are hard to come by in this field. They really are. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think it's very difficult to get the answer of who that is, but there are people out there that say they can do it. But, certainly it sounds like something's going on, especially with that hood over the oven. And I know it's probably like a toggle, like a metal toggle switch or something. And, just to know that kind of like it turns on by itself, but not really by itself. Now, let me ask you this. Now, my dad's with us still, thank goodness. My mom's passed. I think I've heard her say something to me like telepathically, but I've not seen her, or there's not been anything like what you're describing. I mean, are you glad that there's stuff happening? I mean, what are your thoughts? Is it comforting, or is it just a big mystery? What are your thoughts?
It's comforting sometimes, but sometimes it isn't. I get pretty freaked out when I'm over there by myself. Mm-hmm. So I think if it was more, something that wasn't evil, I don't think I would be as afraid as I get over there sometimes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I've had my dad, his favorite hangout spot out by the shed. I've been out there, and my phone has just turned on by itself and started playing the same song that I put on his memorial video.
Oh man. Wow.
There's crazy stuff, but, I don't know, too many to talk about right now, but I'd like to check out that Facebook page and maybe share some more on there.
Yeah, Jim Harold's Virtual Campfire. Well, Gary, best of luck in your search for answers, and I hope you don't get too freaked out about everything, but we thank you for sharing your story tonight on the Campfire.
Hey, thank you.
Ken is back on the line from Northern California. You might remember a few weeks ago, he told us a really chilling story about hellhounds. Well, he is back and has yet another chilling story, which I guess kind of ties in, he says, and we're so glad to have him back on the show. Ken, welcome back. And boy, that first story you got us, I can't wait to hear this one.
Well, Jim, thanks for having me again. And maybe the hellhounds has something to do with what I'm going to lead in right now. Not quite sure, but you just never know.
That's true.
We moved into our house 18 years ago. Since we were new to the neighborhood, we thought it would be a great idea to introduce ourselves to the neighbors. So we're packing up, unpacking, getting our stuff going, and we noticed one of our neighbors is outside doing yard work. So my wife and I would go outside and we exchanged pleasantries. During our conversation, our neighbor asked if we knew about the murder house. I emphatically replied, no, we didn't know about a murder house, sort of questioning in my voice. We bought a foreclosure, so the realtor wasn't required to disclose any details. I can feel anxiety coming over me. Much to our relief, the neighbor explained it was not our house, but the house between his and ours. Turns out, the husband had a mistress. He murdered his wife in the house in order to be with his mistress. My neighbor actually testified against the husband.
Wow.
Yeah. Several normal conversations occurred between this neighbor and the husband while the wife's body was inside the house.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and apparently the husband set the house on fire, and that's how they discovered that this had occurred to his wife. So it was quite traumatic.
Yeah, but for sure.
So fast forward a couple years. House needed a good paint job. So I'm painting the house, and it's during springtime. As I was painting the backyard, I could hear footsteps crunching on the leaves behind me. The crunch pattern of the leaves were consistent with an adult. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was my wife, as my kids were just too young at the time. There's no way their little stomping feet were making this foot pattern. So I looked back, and much to my surprise, there was no one there. Looked around, didn't see anything, so I went inside and I asked my wife, hey, you been outside? She said, no, I hadn't been outside for several hours. Kind of scratching my head. I thought, okay, couldn't explain it. I went outside, back to painting. I had work to do. My wife has this big, giant blue workout ball. She never used it. The kids actually used it to play with. They'd bring it outside, and my wife would say, no, that's my workout ball. I got to keep it inside. Although, I'll tell you the truth, she never really used it. So as I was painting, this ball rolled into the back of my legs. I thought, wow. There was a little wind outside, so I didn't think much of it. So I picked up this big blue ball, and I walked over to our chain link fence. The fence separated half of the backyard to prevent the dogs from getting into our RV parking area, which is the area that I was painting. On the other side of this chain link fence was our kids' trampoline. This trampoline had a net around it that prevented the kids from falling out. In order to get in and out of this trampoline, you had to work through a maze of netting. It was not easy. So I picked up this blue ball, and I hurled it over the netting into the trampoline. I go back to painting, not thinking anything of it. 2 minutes later, as soon as I get back down to painting, the ball hits the back of my legs again. I immediately jump up because I knew this was impossible. This blue ball would have to wiggle its way through the netting, and somehow, after getting through the netting, then get over this chain link fence in order to reach me. I immediately jumped up, probably said some profanities, and ran into the house. My wife could tell something was wrong based on the look of my face. So I can't explain it. It took me a couple days to actually get back and finish painting that side of the house. Again, keep in mind, this is the same backyard where the hellhounds appeared. Still can't explain either instance. Just one of those things.
Yeah, very, very strange. And it's one of those things where, I mean, just knowing that such a heinous act took place, just down the street or the next house over. I mean, that's really kind of frightening, even though it had to be a relief to know that your house wasn't the murder house.
Correct.
Yeah.
It was a relief.
Wow. My goodness. Well, Ken, thank you so much for joining us today on the Campfire. And if you have any other stories, I hope you come back and tell us.
Jim, I appreciate you having me. Thanks a lot.
Next up on the show is Nikki from Arizona. And she's going to tell us about a story that happened to her. Very interesting, in fact. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us, and tell us what happened.
Hi, thank you. So my story starts about 2 years ago in November of 2016 or 15. And I had just moved into an apartment in Mesa, and in not a very good area. And I had been living there for a few months already. And it was a 3-day span when this happened. And I've never had any instances of sleepwalking before. And so the first night, it was on a Sunday, I woke up, or I was having a dream that I was standing on the edge of my bed, like with my arms stretched out, and I fell on the back of my bed.
Oh, my.
And that woke me up. Like, I just figured it was more like one of those dreams when you, like, jolt yourself awake because you're falling.
Right.
And so I didn't really think much of it, and I went back to sleep. The next night on Monday, I woke up in the middle of the night because I was standing in my kitchen pouring water from my Brita filter into a glass of water, and the cup was overflowing and there was water going on the floor and the counter. And I just thought it was weird, and I was like, okay, weird. I've never sleepwalked before. And so I just cleaned up the water and went back to sleep. The next night on Tuesday, I woke up and I turned over, and this apartment was pretty small. It was like a little bit bigger than a studio, but the bedroom had like two separate areas, like for the sink for the bathroom, and then it had a different door for the bathroom, and there was like a little hall there. And I woke up and I saw what looked like a woman standing in the hallway.
Right.
And I just thought it was like one of those things you wake up where it's a dream, and your brain's just kind of still playing the dream. And so I just kind of like rubbed my eyes and looked back, and she was still standing there. And so I just waited like a little bit longer, and I, rubbed my eyes again, and she was still there. And she didn't go away for a while, about 10 minutes. And she was just standing there. I didn't try to talk to her. I was kind of worried about, what would happen if she turned around, because she was facing this wall. And it was bright enough that I could see what she looked like. And she was like about my height, like 5'6", and she had like shoulder length brown hair, and she was wearing, it was kind of like a nightgown, but like a oversized t-shirt, and it was white, and like the sleeves went down to her elbows, and she was just standing there. She wasn't like really facing the wall. She was kind of like looking down, and I had like these pictures there, but it didn't look like she was looking at the pictures. She was just standing there.
Huh.
And so I just kind of like played on my phone, and then eventually I looked back and she was gone, and I went to sleep. The next day I talked to one of my friends who she had told me before that she was a medium. And so I thought maybe reaching out to her would be, good. And so I called her and asked her, and I said, this never happened to me before. What do I do? And she said, well, usually, when they come to you, they're reaching out because they're lost or confused or they need something.
Okay.
So if you want to approach her, then you can if you see her again, but you need to, be aware of, what you're opening up. And so I didn't want to approach her, so I went back home and I just told her, I said, you know what, I don't want to help you. I can't help you. I don't, want anything to do with this. And so I never saw her again, which was great. And I lived in that apartment for like another, 6 months until May of 2016. And I moved into a different apartment, and I really didn't have any problems there. Nothing really happened. And then my boyfriend and his 2 daughters moved in with me in August of 2017 or 2016, I'm sorry. And that's when it kind of escalated again.
Okay.
There was a couple instances where I woke up and I was like really angry when I woke up, and it was kind of like the sleepwalking thing again. And there was this one time where my boyfriend and I were watching that movie, The Conjuring.
Oh, yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a good movie. And it was during one of the quiet parts, and we heard his daughter screaming. And so we both got up, and we went into the girls' room. And she was like standing in the middle of the room, and then she just like dropped to the floor. And then she would like stand back up and like do something weird and then fall back on the floor while like screaming and doing all these weird things. It didn't look like a seizure. It kind of looked like sleepwalking. And she never sleepwalked before. And then towards the end of it, she had an accident and she pooped herself.
Oh,
and, we cleaned her up, and we cleaned up the room and everything. And then the next morning we had a talk with her, and we said, what were you dreaming about? And she was like, what do you mean? And we were like, well, like you were throwing yourself on the floor and you pooped. And she said, no, that was just a dream. And we're like, well, no, it wasn't. It happened. So, and then about a week or 2 later, the other daughter woke us up like in the middle of the night, and just really nonchalantly told my boyfriend, can you close the closet door, because I don't want to look at the woman in there anymore.
Oh.
And so he just closed the door, and we just kind of ignored it. And then a little while later, I told him, like, I had been seeing shadows out of the corner of my eye, and I thought it was weird, and I asked him if he ever experienced that. And he, like, looked at me, and he said, oh, so you're seeing them too? And I was like, oh, my God.
Oh, boy.
And I knew he was experiencing it too, but he's, a skeptic. He's never really experienced anything like that. But since moving in with me, he's had a few experiences. At that house, we didn't really have any more, but we recently moved into this new house in this past May. And since we moved in here, it's been kind of weird feelings here. And we've heard music playing near where the girls' room is. Their closet, like, goes into the garage, kind of. It's closed off. But the garage is an attachment, and so is their room. And in the garage, there's attic space above the girls' room, and we'll hear music, like, coming from that general area. And we've been hearing, like, a little boy kind of whining, and just all these different random noises.
That's weird. Music playing, that would really bother me.
Yeah, and so, like, and the only time something happens to either me or him is when we're here alone.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah,
like, it doesn't want to show itself to multiple people.
Exactly. I think it likes the girls, though, whatever it is, because they haven't, said anything or seen anything. It's just me and him that experience it.
Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, please keep us up to date and let us know what's going on. I mean, now you're still at this place? Is that, or is this a different place?
No, we're still in the same place. The most recent thing was like last week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a little boy.
Oh man! Now let me ask you this: how do you feel about that? I mean, do you want to leave? Does it not bother you? Some people even welcome these kind of things. What do you think? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I've had a lot of different, like, paranormal experiences, a lot of different weird things that have happened to me, and my boyfriend has had, like, a couple other things as well. And so I'm not going to move, but I'm not going to egg it on or try to see it.
Right.
Because seeing that one lady was enough for me.
Yeah,
I think I'm a little scared of it, but.
Yeah. Well, we wish you the best, Nikki, and we thank you for being a part tonight of the Campfire.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight on the Campfire. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Such great stories from such great people. We're so glad to have them on the program and give them a place to share their stories. Another place to share your stories you might want to check out is our virtual campfire group. That's over at virtualcampfiregroup.com. That'll take you right over to our Facebook group dedicated to spooky stories. And sign up for membership there. It's absolutely free for that. And we will approve you, assuming you're not a spammer. And you'll be able to meet up with some great people like the people you heard tonight. We thank you so much for being a part. And by the way, if you're wondering, well, how do I get those hundreds of other Campfire episodes going back since 2009? You'll want to check out our Plus Club. That's at jimharoldplus.com. We thank you so much for being a part of the show and for listening. And until next time, as always, stay spooky. Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Jim Harold's Campfire. Tune in again next time for more stories of ordinary people who have experienced extraordinary things.